Greetings my friends, George here from No Nonsense Metal Reviews, back today with a gig review. Going to share a few words and share my experience from catching none other than the mighty Sabaton, Swedish heavy metal war machine, yes, live in concert here in the UK on their Legendary World Tour at the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham, in fact. My first trip to the Motorpoint Arena, my first trip to Nottingham, in fact, on Saturday, 6th of December 2025. What a show that was. So, Sabaton just released in October of this year their absolutely glorious new album, Legends, and it is a freaking legendary album. I absolutely love it, I must say. And in fact, a bit of shameless self-promotion, a bit of plug here. Sabaton's Legends ranked number 2 in the No Nonsense Metal Reviews top 15 albums of 2025 with very good reason. If you haven't seen the rundown of my top 15 albums of 2025, I'll pop a link to that in the video here and in the description, so do check that out. But Sabaton have embarked on a very impressive tour, and it's going to cover a lot of different ground over the coming months, and it already has done, worked its way through Europe, and I believe we've got a pretty sizable US run coming up as well. They're taking Legends on the road, and they're doing it in style. Okay, so the Legendary Tour has featured 3 dates here in the UK. Like I said, covered a lot of ground, a lot of big venues in Europe actually, but the UK dates included a stop at the O2 Arena in London. They've also played the Co-op Arena in Manchester, and their closing UK date was in Nottingham at the Motorpoint. So as geographically that is the easiest for me to get to, decided to take a trip to Nottingham, and I'm so glad that I did. So I love Sabaton. I absolutely get it. Not every metalhead's cup of tea. Heavy metal, verging on power metal, or just power metal, whatever you want to call it. Sabaton are a very, very over-the-top, very bombastic band. It's heavy metal in my eyes, but it is very powerful stuff. It's very upbeat, which is surprising considering that they are tackling themes of war and conflict. And on Legends, they're talking about legendary figures, rulers and leaders and warlords of great fame throughout time. So not everyone's cup of tea. I do happen to absolutely love Sabaton, and Legends hold it in very, very high regard. They're also very well known to be a very good live band. I have happened to have caught Sabaton live a number of times in the past, but I haven't actually caught them live since their co-headline tour. It must have been about 2014, 2015 here in the UK alongside Ailstorm. Haven't seen them since that run, and that was on the Heroes tour. So I've missed out on the last few runs that they've done in support of the Great War and the war to end all wars. So I was determined to right that wrong and finally catch Sabaton live once again. And of course, that run that I last caught them on way back when, it was all very small venues. I've seen Sabaton at the Norwich Waterfront and the Norwich UEA, and these are little venues. I did also see them at Download Festival one year, which was a bit bigger scale, of course, but seeing Sabaton in an arena, I believe it's about a 10,000 capacity arena, that was where you want to see a band like Sabaton. Huge stage setup, massive performance, all of the fireworks and explosions and pyro that you could probably legally get away with. What a performance. It was absolutely stunning. But of course, before we had Sabaton performing their own set, we did have a performance of the Legendary Orchestra. So this one, it was kept very, very much, under wraps. It was kept as a bit of a secret, obviously, until the tour began. But the Legendary Orchestra was essentially an orchestra comprising some very talented musicians and a choir, the Legendary Choir, performing orchestral versions of Sabaton's own songs. So the band, or the orchestra, was kind of fronted by, I believe the name is Noah Grumman, of Stardust. Did a little bit of research just to get familiar for this review, of course, but a very talented vocalist and very impressive stage presence Noah had. A very, very powerful voice as well, alongside Patty Gurdy, the hurdy-gurdy player and multi-talented instrumentalist who I've also seen with Ailstorm previously, and she's done lots of original material and covers and things, so a great talent. And then I believe the name's Maya on violin. So we've got some very talented musicians there alongside a full orchestra. So you had, percussion and wind instruments and all the good stuff that you would expect at an orchestra. And what they did was they performed very grand versions of Sabaton's own very grand songs. Sabaton are a very grand sounding band. They have a very, very big sound, and these orchestral versions sounded brilliant. We were taken through some absolute fan favourites and essentials, tracks that Sabaton have had in their live set for many years, but we also got some real deep cuts as well. So they did perform Ghost Division, which was incredible, great performance there. We also had a new track from Legends. We had Made of Steel, and we had a great run through of deeper dives and more well-known tracks as well. We also had a very moving rendition of The Final Solution as well, which was very, very powerful stuff indeed. And yeah, new and old tracks, just a real mix, but some great stuff, actually, I will say. Some really good stuff. We had Sarajevo as well. So a good mix. And it was a really good performance. It flowed really well. It was very well orchestrated. Very, very impressive performances. It was really gripping stuff. And they were on for a good sort of hour or so. And it was very impressive to see. So you had a fantastic orchestral performance there. Bit of a treat. And it really did get you warmed up and ready to see the mighty Sabaton, which was, of course, the main attraction. So Sabaton have clearly come a long way since I last saw them. They are a huge band across the globe now. They've got their own, or they did have their own festival in Sweden. I believe they even had a cruise as well. They are a big name. You see them on their festival lineups, or the festival lineups, they're right near the top, if not headlining. And the performance that they delivered at the Motorpoint was reflective of a top tier band. Absolute talents. Absolute freaking talents. Of course, with Legends, exploring the history and the legacy of names such as Napoleon Bonaparte, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, and so on. There's pretty big subjects, and Sabaton, being very theatric, they actually had actors performing these roles who were doing their kind of almost pantomime pieces before the main set kicked off, and it was very entertaining. We had Napoleon exchanging words and threats with Genghis Khan, and then we had the two of them ganging up on Julius Caesar, and with some attempted murder there, and it was very entertaining, very, very laughable stuff. It was just light-hearted, but very entertaining, and a good kind of build up there, a little bit of comedy going on. And then we also had Templars as well, which was how Sabaton entered the stage, and I was not expecting it, because we had an actor playing the role of a Templar, Knights Templar, saying his piece, walking out from this enormous stage-dominating castle. Okay, so Sabaton have their own castle on stage, not curtain with a castle design on it, not some little props that you wheel out here and there, a full-sized freaking castle, and it was so cool. Check out the pictures online. there's plenty of footage out there, and it was so cool. So out of the castle and from behind the enormous freaking central stage drum riser that looked like a big kind of stone kind of column, almost like the top of a column, freaking amazing. We had the Templar come out with Knights Templars with their helmets on. After the main Templar had said his piece, helmets came off, and it was the band. It was the lineup there. Joachim on vocals, the main man looking in good physical condition. He's a pretty tough looking dude, and alongside Pa on bass is kind of the other founding member, a real personality, really nice guy. And then we've got Chris and Toby back in the band on guitars. So we had their lineup revealing themselves from their awesome attire there. And they kicked off straight away with a main opening track from Legends Templars. And it was freaking brilliant. It was a brilliant way to kick off the set. The absolute theatrics was amazing. Great to hear such a powerful, energetic track opening up the set there. It was absolutely fantastic. Then they led pretty seamlessly into The Last Stand, which was brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. That's an interesting song because I know that I read recently, in fact, that Sabaton are surprised with how popular that track has become with time, whereas at the time of release, wasn't all that popular. Interesting. Before, they had a little costume change, went behind the castle there, came back in the usual camo, kind of winter camo trousers and armour vest that Joachim has. The more familiar Sabaton stage costumes there. So they came out and they delivered a succession of killer tracks from the brilliant Legends. So we already had Templars. We then had Hordes of Khan, which is absolutely fantastic. We had I Emperor. We had Crossing the Rubicon there as well. And it was absolutely fantastic to hear those particularly brilliant tracks from the album with the actors present as well. Absolutely brilliant. They all sounded fantastic, performed so well. You know, Sabaton did not miss a beat. Not for a second. Excellent guitar work. You know, real talents in the band there. Particularly mesmerised watching Hannes on drums there on the riser. Absolute phenomenal drummer. That guy is a real talent. So some great stuff there from the new album, and it was absolutely brilliant. They did, a little bit later in the set, come back to Legends and with some really amazing costumes and stage props. They performed A Tiger Among Dragons, which is one of my favourite tracks from this brilliant album. It's a really powerful song, immense chorus, so catchy. I mean, this album is just bristling with hooks. Incredible stuff, and that was particularly amazing. We had Chris and Toby sort of with these big drums, almost like war drums, with these amazing sort of dragon designs on. So they were actually performing drums as well, and Mr. Broden on vocals stepped up with his guitar as well and was performing guitar, and it was absolutely brilliant. Fantastic track, incredible stuff. But they also gave us a real career spanning mix as well throughout the set, some real gems. I was intrigued to see if they would also revisit The Great War and The War to End All Wars, given that they've obviously only recently finished touring for The War to End All Wars, and they've been playing a lot of these songs, of course. But they did, and they played a couple of absolutely brilliant numbers from this album. This one, I've become particularly fond of it over the last sort of few months following Legends rather. This album has a legacy that will definitely live on. Stormtroopers, absolutely fantastic. Joachim comes on with a big trench coat and what looks like a trench gun on his back. We've got loads of costume changes throughout the set, but Stormtroopers was an absolutely brilliant one. Being that it's near Christmas, we of course had the Christmas truce. I think they probably would have tried to play that regardless of the time of year, because it is a very beautiful piece of work. That was sort of midway through the set. They had the whole crowd with their phone torches on. You know, it was a real beautiful moment to see a full arena of bright lights all singing the Christmas truce. And then launching into Soldier of Heaven, which is again an absolute stunner. Absolutely stunning stuff. Really fantastic. They just absolutely delivered there. They did also revisit The Great War. And, of course, a couple of tracks that we just know they're going to include if they're going to revisit this album is going to be The Red Baron. And that was quite early on in the set, actually, after the new Legends tracks. The Red Baron, it was absolutely fantastic there. Really energetic. Broden had us all chanting along for the higher chorus, and it was absolutely glorious stuff. But they also did later on, the whole stage was gassed. It was, you know, dry ice or whatever that stuff is. The lighting was green, very eerie, very ambient stuff. And they of course played The Attack of the Dead Men. And while they were doing that, there were also members running around the edge of the arena with gas masks on. Really cool, really theatric stuff. So we had The Attack of the Dead Men from this brilliant album. Absolutely fantastic. But we did get some very deep dives, in fact. They did play from this gem, and again, not getting the order, set list order quite in chronological order here, but they did revisit Carolus Rex, which I was very pleased that this album got some attention, because it's a glorious album. I freaking love it. And they played the title track quite early on in the set again, but sung in Swedish. So it was absolutely fantastic. We did, of course, have the title track, The Last Stand, which is glorious, and the opening track, Sparta, was performed by the Legendary Orchestra. Was very pleased that Heroes was given some attention as well, with the brilliant Night Witches, which is absolutely freaking glorious. They also closed out their kind of main set, or the bulk of the set, with the awesome, very catchy To Hell and Back. So, did also have to play the absolutely essential fan favourite title track, Primo Victoria, which is just awesome. Absolutely love that one. Elsewhere in the set, we had Steel Commanders, which is a great number. That was kind of a standalone track, but absolutely brilliant. They surprised us with the title track, The Art of War, which was incredible. Absolutely freaking brilliant. Loved that. But I think the real surprise, and I was just not anticipating it, and I don't think anyone could have anticipated it, was a track dug out from the shelved or much delayed debut, effectively. This was the first album they recorded, but it was released a few years later. Metalizer. We had the closing track from this album, Masters of the World, which was also a single as well. So absolute curveball there, and it was a really good performance, just a real deep dive. I doubt that there was many people there that were prepared for that one unless they were already aware of the set list. But the whole stage show, the whole performance was absolutely stunning. Sabaton did not miss a beat. They are absolute masters, and you could tell they were clearly loving every minute of it. They were clearly enjoying themselves. They are absolute experts there. Of course, a lot of good crowd banter and interaction. Sabaton famously always have a bit of a laugh up on stage, and there was no shortage of laughs. Very comedic, lots of banter going on there. Frontman, Joachim Broden, he is a brilliant frontman. He is an iconic figure in his own right, but he's a real brilliant stage presence and a real brilliant frontman as well. And he was just brilliant, a very entertaining man to watch. But he's also got a great voice, really powerful voice, and he sounded brilliant throughout the set, playing newer and older tracks. In terms of the band themselves, already mentioned, Hannes on drums is an absolute kit killer. That guy is incredibly talented. Phenomenal drummer. Chris, exceptional guitarist, amazing performer there. You know, just oozing with talent. That guy is just all over the fret. Toby on guitars as well, back in the band after a number of years away. Brilliant performer as well, an incredible talent there. Of course, Pa on bass, very, very talented bassist there. So we also were joined by the Legendary Choir about halfway through the set. They came on and they were there to perform a kind of choir section and really enhance the epicness of some of those tracks, such as The Art of War, for example. Absolutely brilliant. It just freaking worked. It was very grand. But that whole stage setup was incredible. They had lots of actors coming and going as well, kind of bringing out the stage props, and so much pyro and explosives. Actually, the actors brought out, during the Stormtroopers track, bringing out these huge crates, obviously prop crates, that were obviously meant to house explosives, and that went off with an absolute explosion. Very loud stuff. We were obviously deafened and burned, being quite down near the front there, getting those full explosions going on, and massive amounts of pyro. Honestly, I think that's the most pyro I've seen outside of an Iron Maiden show. They're always quite good ones for pyro, or Metallica even. So much pyro, so much going on there. But absolutely brilliant. It was an absolute pleasure to watch, and I will go and see Sabaton again in a heartbeat. Setlist wise, I was really quite pleasantly surprised with that. It would have been great to hear some of those absolute favourites, of course. I would love to have heard Lion from the North. That was one that I was kind of hoping that they were going to dig out from Carolus Rex. Same, I would like to have heard some more tracks from Heroes as well, but that's just personal preference. Really, it was a good, diverse set list with some real deep cuts and gems in there. Steel Commanders was a great one. Masters of the World was the real curveball there, but overall, just a great, great performance. I do honestly feel Sabaton are only going to get bigger, of course, and that they really do deserve top festival headlining spots here in the UK. You know, Bloodstock, maybe a few years before Download, but they definitely deserve to be at that top spot. World-class performers there. So, that is my experience from the Motorpoint Arena, seeing the awesome Sabaton on the Legends World Tour, delivering some freaking amazing heavy freaking metal. Absolute masters of the art. Absolutely brilliant band. If you're not familiar with Sabaton, do check them out. You know, don't be put off by the power metal tag. They are a fantastic band, well worth checking out. Incredible albums. Certainly the most recent album, Legends, is one you need to get familiar with. The last two albums which tackled the First World War, The War to End All Wars, and somewhere here I've got the other one, The Great War there. And put the effort in, delve back, because there is a wealth of excellent albums here. Carolus Rex, the brilliant and very heavy The Art of War, the equally heavy and brilliant debut Primo Victoria. There's just a wealth of stuff to be enjoyed here, so do check them out. If you get a chance to catch them on the Legends World Tour, do get your ticket, get down there. It's well worth it. And if you are going, but maybe you're not quite sure what to expect from the Legendary Orchestra, make sure you get down there for that. It is well worth checking out. It's a real spectacle, real awesome performance. So my friends, were you there at the Motorpoint Arena, or did you catch Sabaton elsewhere on the Legends Tour so far? Let me know what your experience was. How did you find it? How did you enjoy the show? But thank you very much for watching, my friends. Do feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. The support is always greatly appreciated. Check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. Until next time, take care of yourselves, listen to Sabaton, and stay frickin' heavy.